Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Rebel Collective podcast. I'm your host, Drago Reid.
And I'm Laura Eisenhower.
We are the Rebel Collective, just two rebels that have been deplatformed, deleted, shadow banned, persecuted, and muzzled, and we're leading other rebels and pioneers in their fields and giving them a voice that can't be silenced, because we are the resistance.
That's right. And here we are today with my good friend Leon Kennedy. Wow, it's so amazing to have you here with us. It's just so wild to just think back of all the times I've spent with you and known you and just learning more and more about you. Just I can't wait to hear what we're going to dive into. So let me tell you about Leon, everybody. So, Leon Isaac Kennedy is a true pioneer in the realms of entertainment, entrepreneurship, and ministry. Hailing from Cleveland, Ohio, Leon's extraordinary journey defies conventional norms and embodies the spirit of resilience, creativity, and unwavering determination. From an early age, Leon dared to dream, setting his sights on becoming a movie star, writer, and producer when opportunities for minorities were scarce. Undeterred by the limited prospects, he formulated a plan, embarking on a path that would change the landscape of the industry forever. As a teenager, Leon found his initial foothold in the world of radio, becoming the youngest disc jockey in the top 10 market. His charismatic voice and passion for music charmed listeners across Cleveland, Detroit, Washington, D.C., Houston, and Los Angeles, earning him the moniker of Leon the Lover. But his ambitions didn't stop at radio. Leon's visionary spirit led him to become a trailblazer in television, co-writing, producing, and co-hosting the nation's first Black syndicated TV series, Out of Sight. Breaking barriers, he syndicated the show to over 20 cities, well before the emergence of groundbreaking shows like In Living Color. Leon's indomitable drive propelled him into the world of major motion pictures, where he made an indelible mark as a writer, actor, and producer. Films like Penitentiary shattered box office records across the country and became the #1 independent film of the year, earning critical acclaim and solidifying his position as a filmmaker's icon, showcasing his work globally and opening doors for future minority filmmakers. Kennedy continued with Penitentiary 2 and 3, and Body and Soul, and the unconquerable Muhammad Ali, and Jane Kennedy, Lone Wolf, McQuaid, with Chuck Norris and David Carradine, as well as starred in films with Academy Award winners such as Ernest Borgnine and Anne Archer.
To dispel the myth that Black films have no overseas commercial value, Kennedy was one of the first minority filmmakers to travel to the Cannes and Milford film festivals. Additionally, Kennedy broke barriers and traveled to Russia and China long before Americans were welcome into those countries. Kennedy's Body and Soul was one of the first American films to be purchased by the Chinese government and started the trend for importation of American films. As a result, Kennedy's films played in virtually every country in the world and opened many doors for today's minority filmmakers. Entertainers like Ice Cube, Snoop Dogg, Robert Townsend, and many others credit Leon as their sole inspiration to wear multiple hats different types of ways, and many call Leon the godfather of his generation of minority filmmakers. The kid from Cleveland has reached his goal, that rare Hollywood air. He was featured on Lifestyles of the Rich and Famous, appeared in hundreds of magazine covers, was invited to the Academy Awards, the Grammys, the Emmys, and all the A-list parties. But his journey took an unexpected turn when Leon, at the height of his Hollywood success, answered to a higher calling. Turning his back on fame and fortune, he devoted himself to full-time ministry, utilizing his creative skills and spiritual insights to help others find their own paths to healing and transformation. His ministry has helped and touched countless lives, bringing light and deliverance to those in need. Now, after over 2 decades away from the spotlight, the one and only Leon returns, combining his creative genius with his spirited calling. His upcoming projects aim to produce content that inspires, motivates, and sheds light on the real truth. Through documentaries, television, and transformative film, Leon seeks to possess the airwaves as a force of good, making a lasting impact on the world. Behind the scenes, Leon is known as a no-holds-barred, pulling no punches, jabbing you with an unfiltered and poetic delivery of truth, wisdom, and unyielding passion for empowering others to embrace their inner greatness and break free from the chains of society's limitations. Join us as we delve into the remarkable life of Leon Isaac Kennedy, a man who defied limitations, shattered barriers, and embraced the power of creativity, entrepreneurship, and spirituality to create a legacy that transcends merit and entertainment. Welcome to the show, Leon.
Well, it's my extreme pleasure to be here. I'm almost embarrassed with all the different things that were said there. But thank you. Drago, it's good to be with you. And you and I have only known each other for a short time. But we bonded when we met at one of the conferences. But Laura and I go back several years, and just as such a sweet, dear friend of mine, that when you approached me and said that the two of you wanted to do an interview, I said, well, I have to do it. So I'm looking forward to this. And Laura, I love you so much.
Oh, I love you, Leon. Oh man, so incredible to have you with us. Your journey is you are just a legend, Leon. I mean, talk to us about just this from your own words, just embarking on this, journey, and just how
on this showbiz journey.
Yeah.
With all the opportunities that are going on now for minorities, I said to a friend recently, I guess I hit the map 40 years too soon, because the playing field has certainly opened up a lot more than when I first started. I was a young kid, I think in the 10th grade. And originally I was going to be a doctor because I always wanted to help people. And I got basically straight A's, so I was pretty good in school. And then something happened, and all in 2 weeks, I changed and said, no, I'm going to be a movie star. I'm going to be a writer and a producer and a director and star in movies. Well, I had enough sense even way back then in the 10th grade to know that there were not a lot of opportunities for minorities. There were no blacks really, even on TV series back then or in TV commercials, and certainly not many doing major motion pictures. And then for a light-skinned black, there were even less opportunities. So I knew I was going to have what I would call a different way in. So I thought about it. And even back then, even though I didn't know it, I would pray about things and I would think about things, and perhaps enlightenment would come in. But at any rate, something dropped into me saying, okay, I know what I'll do. I'll become a DJ, be a big on the air personality. From there, I'll get my own TV show. And from there, I'll back in my way into movies. So following that plan, that's what I started doing. Back then, you had to have a third-class FCC license to be a disc jockey, because you had to do a lot of your own engineering things. And so I went out and got the booklet to take the test, and then went down and took the test and passed the test. And then I went to a radio station. And, Laura and Dre, I teach things like this when I do college lectures or life coaching or whatever. I always tell people you have to have a plan. If you don't have a plan, it's like getting on an elevator and you don't push your button. You want to get to the 7th floor, but you didn't push your button. So you get on an elevator, somebody pushes penthouse, basement, 3rd floor, 4th floor, you go up, down, all around, but you never get to your floor. That's the same thing if you don't have a plan in your life. You've got to have a plan. And so many times I speak, especially to young people, and I say, well, what do you want to do in your life? And they say, I don't know. What do you want to be? They say, I don't know. And I say, well, you have a good chance of being that and doing that. Nothing, because you've got to have a plan. So my plan was to do what I just said, and I put that plan into motion. And I went to a radio station, and walked in actually and was waiting to see the program director, who was this big, important man. And I really sat for about 3 hours before having an opportunity to say something to him. And when he finally came out of his office and other people weren't around him, I ran up to him and I said, "Sir, could I speak to you a second?" And he said, "What do you want, kid?" And I said, "I want to be a disc jockey." And he laughed at me. He said, "Everybody wants to be a jock." And he went on down the hallway. And I ran up to him and I said, "Sir, if you would just let me hang around you so that I could try to be like you, I'll work for you for free." And he looked at me and said, "You'll work for me for free?" I said, "Yes, sir. Whatever you want me to do. I'll take out the trash. I'll be a gopher. I'll run the errands, whatever you want me to do." He said, "You'll really work for me for free?" I said, "Yes, sir." So I guess something touched him. He wanted to challenge me. He said, "If you're going to work for me for free, be here tomorrow morning at 9 o'clock. And that's what started the whole thing. And I tell people, Drago, that like produces like. Whatever you want to do, you got to be around those people that are already doing it. Wherever you want to go, you've got to be around people that have already been there, and then they can show you how they got there. If you want to be a doctor, don't hang around with plumbers. Now, I'm not knocking plumbers because plumbers make a lot of money, but it's a whole different mindset. So you got to be around the people that are doing what you want to do because they can give you some tips. People say there's no shortcut to success, but there is. You can have great shortcuts by having the right mentor, the right teacher, the right life coach that will save you years and lots of tears as far as your journey on life.
So true.
I agree with that 100%, man. Like they say, you're a reflection of everyone you hang out with. So if you're only hanging around with people with no life goals, no directions, your life is going to be determined to probably go nowhere. So I like, again, what you said, I like to surround myself with people that I want to become, people that help me become a better version of myself, people who push me, stuff like that. So I 100% understand.
Very much so.
Yeah.
So following that career arc, I became a DJ at the tender age of 15. And back then, DJs were really, it's like when DJs ruled the world. That's when the big time personality in a city was better known than the baseball player or the football player or whatever, because you were a big time personality jock. You might have had 2 or 3 million people listening to you per day or per evening whenever your show was on. So you had a lot of clout in that particular town. From there, I did get a TV show at the age of 18. I wrote and produced and syndicated a show by the time I was like 19, 20. And then at age 26, I started doing major motion pictures out here in Hollywood and was blessed to have the #1 independent film of the year, little film called Penitentiary. To have the #1 independent film of the year, that's equivalent, if you're a filmmaker, that's equivalent to winning the NBA championship. I mean, that's something that you aspire to, and most people never reach, to have the #1 film in the country. So that was quite a dream come true. And once again, Drago, that's in believing in your dreams, Laura, because when we were doing that film, people laughed at us, they ridiculed us. Why are you doing this film? Nobody's going to see Black films anymore. Why are you doing it? I said, I'm doing it to prove that I'm a leading man in films. And Jamal Fanaka, who was the director, is doing it to prove that he can direct a major motion picture. So no one wanted the film when it first came out. The exhibitors didn't want it, but we found one person that was willing to take it on. And we had no money to do the marketing. And I said, well, that's all right. I'll tell you what you do. I'm talking to the distribution company. I said, open it up in Detroit, because I had been a big time disc jockey in Detroit. I said, I'll go in and I'll promote it. So I went in a week early to promote the movie and put myself on Good Morning Detroit and several other TV stations for interviews, different radio interviews, drove around to different high schools doing what we call drive-bys, passing out thousands of leaflets. You got to come and see Penitentiary. And anyway, long story short, when that little film came out, there was a line around the block. And then word of mouth hit, and people kept talking about it, and other people wanted to see it, and people liked it, and they went back to see it 2 and 3 times, and it just took off.
What was
So that little film that nobody wanted, we did that for $350,000, and it grossed over $20 million. That was in the very first go round, which was big money back in those days, because back in those days, at a black movie theater, ticket prices were 99 cents. If you were in Westwood or Hollywood Boulevard, ticket prices were $3 compared to $12 and $15 today. So that's like an $80 million grossing film done for $350,000. And that film's still playing all around the world, even now, some over 30 years later. And it has grossed over 80 million at this point in actual dollars. So it was quite an achievement. And then from there, we did Penitentiary 2, Penitentiary 3. They, you know, it just spawned and had children. Did Body and Soul, that starred Muhammad Ali when he was the #1 personality in the world. He was gracious enough to do the movie for me. Jane Kennedy, my former wife, was also in Body and Soul, along with McQuaid, with Chuck Norris and David Carradine, and on and on and on. So everything was great as far as my career, and I was following my dream until, and we'll do the until and going into ministry a bit later. I'll just stop there in case the two of you have any questions about the arc of that career.
You did a lot around the age of 18. I think it was you hosted, was it Teen-A-Rama in Washington? And then you went directly the same year to do Out of Sight. So it was coming straight from DJing into both of those roles. And then did that basically propel your career from that single year of producing so much content?
Well, once again, working on following the footsteps, following the plan. Yes, my plan was be a big time personality, then from there do your own TV show. So yes, I did Teen-A-Rama. That was my first TV show, which was sort of like a Black American Bandstand, where people would come in and the kids would dance. I was a kid myself, so I fit right in. And then we would have the various stars come by and sing their songs. And it was a very successful show. Then Out of Sight was something like Laugh-In, where you had comedic sketches, quickies. Quickies were real quick comedic bits that you would drop in, and we would have videos from different stars that we would play on that particular show. And that's the show that became syndicated even before Soul Train. So that was what we were doing at that particular age. Oh, by the way, I want to mention this because it was a lot of fun. When I was a DJ in Detroit, 1968, I believe, well, all of Motown was still there. And I was called Leon the Lover, and I was a big-time jock in Detroit. But what a great way for a kid disc jockey to grow up being around all the Motown stablemates. Smokey Robinson and the Miracles, the Temptations, Stevie Wonder, Diana Ross and the Supremes, Marvin Gaye, the Four Tops, and I could go on and on and on. The wonderful Berry Gordy, who's always been like a mentor to me. To be around those people and be there as they're writing a song, and the idea first came to them, and then to be able to go to the studio when they're recording that song. And then when the song is first coming out, to be the disc jockey that has the first time to play it. I got to play it before the other jocks because I was their friend. So it was a wonderful experience to grow up in that setting and to be around all those wonderful geniuses and learn from them. I have always been a sponge that wanted to just be around genius type elevated minds and just sometimes just sit and listen, and then other times glean, and other times ask a lot of questions. And I was able to do that and was blessed to do that at a very young age, and it had a lot to do with the way that I grew up.
Yeah, wow. That's amazing. I yeah, so in Living Color too, that was quite the cast with Jim Carrey and
Yeah, was Out of Sight was what in Living Color became 20 years later. Uh, for some reason, it seems like I've always been ahead of my times. And so I'll do things and then later on other things catch up with what I do. But in Living Color was, like I said, Out of Sight 20 years later.
but these roots to be there in the roots of like Motown and these incredible artists is I mean what a start. And then just where you're 20 years later, and then Disclosure Community and the ministry and everything. It's just wow.
Every day I am just so thankful to God, and I humble myself before God every day just for the blessings that he's given me, the favor that he has given me in my life. Because, nobody has to like you and nobody has to help you. But the footsteps of a righteous man or woman are led by God. And so he has led many, many people across my path that have been just so kind and so gracious to me. And I'm just so thankful for that. And it makes me, how can you ever repay God for his kindness? Well, you can't. But one of the things you can try to do is be gracious and kind to other people. And one of the things that keeps me going is many times now I've run into people that I knew in high school, or I've run into people that I knew in my early career, and they'll say, Leon, you were always cool, you were always laid back, and you were always nice to me. You went out of your way to be nice to me. And that makes me feel good, instead of them saying, well, Leon, you were a butthole, or you were arrogant, or whatever the case. And once again, going back to just looking at other people, I'll tell you two people that were a big influence on my life, and they didn't really have to say too much. It was just by example. One was Smokey Robinson, still is, because whenever you have the pleasure to meet Smokey, he is one of the most gracious, kind, warm human beings that you'll ever meet, and still so humble to do all that he has done. Now, I've known him and been best friends with him since I was about 15, because I met him even before going to Detroit as a disc jockey. I was 15, he was 23 when we met. And so we have over a 60-year friendship now at this point. And by having written over 3,000 to 4,000 hit songs, Songwriters Hall of Fame, you name every award there is, he's gotten it. And yet he was always so nice and so humble. And I said, I want to be like him. I don't want to be big-headed. I don't want to be self-centered. If he can be that nice and gracious, let me be like him. And then Stevie Wonder. Now, Stevie is younger than me, but Stevie and I hung out quite a bit when I was in Detroit. And his mother trusted him to hang out with me. As a matter of fact, the first time he ever spent a night away from home, it was at my house, and his mother let him do that. But at any rate, Stevie, the prolific genius that he is, Stevie would write 2 or 3 new songs every day. Every time you're around him, it's like he's playing his clavinet and he's just knocking things out. But to be that genius that he was, and as young as he was, to not be a butthole, to not be a spoiled brat, I said, Leon, be like Stevie, because I could have gone the other way. Being like I said, when you're a big time disc jockey, you got the whole city. You got lots of things coming at you, lots of people coming at you. You could get the swollen head. You could become, self-centered and arrogant and be a butthole. But why? Why not take the other route, like these two, and be gracious about it? So that's what we did.
What was it like starting Smokey Robinson's food company and basically helping fund and build an entire empire that eventually spread to like 3,500 stores, coming from one of the first artists that made Motown a million records, their first gold album?
Yeah, the first million seller, which was Shop Around. I think it was in 1958 that Shop Around came out. But at any rate, as far as the Smokey Robinson Food Company, we were sitting around one day and I was saying, you know, everybody loves Smokey. So how do you take that love and turn it into dollars? And we should do something. We should have some commodity. And so he said, well, let's do something outside of show business. So we thought about it. And because he travels so much, it's like, well, you've tasted all this good food. Maybe it should be food that you really like. So we finally zeroed in on gumbo. Now, we didn't know what we were doing, because if we did, we would have never gone into the food business, because it's such a difficult business to be in. And we certainly would not have gone into the frozen food market, because it's the most difficult part of the business to be in, because when you're really doing a food situation, now let's take a supermarket. If you take Albertsons, well, they might have 1,000 new products being sent to them every couple months to see if they'll carry it. And they can only take X amount. But see, even when they pick you, it's not that simple. They're not really just saying, yes, we'll take you and we'll put you on the shelf. You have to buy shelf space. And shelf space is like $25,000 per item per particular market. And if you look at the frozen market, it's limited space, limited shelf space. So if they're going to put your product on that shelf, that means something else is coming off the shelf. Well, what's coming out off? One of Bird's Eyes, one of Morton's. So it was a very, very difficult situation. And very few minorities are in the food business. So it was a learning experience. It took me 2 years, really, of pounding the pavement, trying to figure things out, and finally getting that deal done. A very, very difficult deal to get done and to take off. But finally, we were blessed, and we got picked up by Albertsons. We were successful at Albertsons, which was a whole marketing campaign. And then they decided that they would put us in a couple other stores, and then we took off there. Long story short, we ended up being in 3,700 stores, which was quite an achievement.
Yeah, Drago, you're muted. Yeah, it's so interesting how.
Hold on just 1 second. Marina's saying something.
Okay.
Oh. Take that off. Sorry about that.
What's going on?
That sound came through from the email, so I just shut it down. So sorry. I didn't want the email to keep coming.
Did you say that the sound is good?
Yeah, sound is good on our, and she was saying that there was some outside sounds coming in, but she corrected it.
Mm. So going back to your life as a DJ, Leon the Lover, it reminds me of the movie The Ladies' Man, Leon Phelps. Did they make that movie after you and your exploits?
I believe they did. I didn't get any.
Oh, that's awesome, man. I totally seeing you drinking your Cavassier and you seducing the public. Just, you're the voice of the night, man. Like, people log on just to hear your voice and just to relax from all the stresses of the world, man.
But now let me just tell you something here. And eventually I'm going to end up doing a bio, and I'll share this in the bio. But my disc jockey name was Leon the Lover. And so people gave that exploit to just, okay, well, Leon the Lover, you had a lot of women following you and this, that, and the other. But actually it came about because of a show that I did called Leon's Lover's Lane. And Leon's Lover's Lane, I would have my theme song. And then I would talk about things in life. Sometimes it would be about people's love problems or heartbreak or whatever. But other times it was philosophical. And here's how it came about. I remember it so vividly. It was the night that Robert F. Kennedy was assassinated. And as you can remember, JFK had already been assassinated. Martin Luther King, who I happen to know, had been assassinated. And now Robert. And I knew Robert. And I so much wanted him to be president because he had such a heart for people. You know, nowadays we have so many politicians and they're in it to get rich. They're in it for ego or whatever. There's a lot of greed, a lot of grife. But they were servants. They had a heart to serve and to make the world better. And I was just, and being on the air when that happened, I was reading the AIP, Associated Press reports, and it was basically saying it was critical. Then I made some calls to the hospital with some inside people. And basically they were saying, it doesn't look like he's going to make it. I was just devastated. And it's like, what can I do? And I started Lover's Lane, where we talked about love and the power of love and the power of people becoming united with an intention to change the world. And Dusty Springfield had a song way back then, What the World Needs Now is Love, Sweet Love. And I played that, and I played some of Kennedy's speeches. And that's how Leon's Lover's Lane started. That was the impetus. As a matter of fact, I was at a dinner, maybe now 2 months ago, and Robert Kennedy Jr. was there. And he said to me, this is before he made his announcement, he said to me, Leon, I'm actually going to go ahead and run for the presidency because a lot of things need to change. So at any rate, that's how Lover's Lane came about.
Do you feel that the role as the DJ and you creating Lover's Lane impacted your role in ministry? Being able to talk and communicate world's problems over the air?
Yes, because many of the Lover's Lanes, especially the philosophical nights, they were ministry. They were ministry without people knowing it was ministry, because I would pray about what to say. I would pray about what records to play. I would write certain poems, and the messages came across, and they touched a lot of people.
And that's where it's at. When you the ministry in that's merged with the art and the expression and the service to others, and just, and that's who you are, and how everything's unfolded into these new life changes and projects as the world has been changing. You know, different people that you've met and different things that have happened in your life that inspire you to bring forth the art that, you know, has this just spiritual foundation. When you feel
Lori,
there's a betrayal or something with an individual in that heart-centered space, that's got to be a lot to when
yeah. Well, we can get into that. So first of all, let me respond to what you said of being of service to others, which is really why we're all here. And every day is part of my beginning day prayers. I say to the Lord, take this life and make it into something worthwhile for you, Lord. Let me be of service to you, and let me be of service to others. You are a spirit. Now, when I pray to the God that was revealed by Jesus, the creator of souls, because there are different, quote, gods out there. So I want to make sure that I'm praying to the right one. You know, once you get out there, when you get really out there, you can hear lots of different voices. So you got to make sure that you're not being tricked. by trickster spirits. I also pray that I can have the discerning of spirits, which is very important. But at any rate, when I pray to the God, the supreme God, the highest of the high, supreme, the creator of souls, I say, take this life and make it into something worthwhile for you. But I also say, you are a spirit, and on this earthly realm, usually you work through a body. So take this body and let it be yours. You need to speak to someone today, speak through me. You need to touch someone today, touch through me. Help someone, bless someone, do it through me. Show your awesomeness, show your power by healing someone, by delivering someone of bondage. Do it through me. Holy Spirit, have your way. Have your way through this body, and anything that gets in your way, burn it out, purge it out, so it's a vessel for you. And that's part of the prayers that I do as I'm starting my day. Now, with the ministry, that's a very interesting journey, because it was never in my, I would call, business plan. And I'm the kid that always had the plan to go into ministry. Never. I never saw that coming. I was very happy with my life. I was happy being a movie star. I was blessed to be on shows like Lifestyles of the Rich and Famous, and, you know, invited to the A-list parties and the Academy Awards and the Grammys and the Emmys and all those things. And I must say, I had a charmed life. And then all of a sudden, God came knocking. Now, if someone asked me, I always believed in God. If someone asked me, I always believed in Jesus, the Son of the living God. But that's as far as I went. I didn't want to go into ministry. I wanted to be saved, make heaven, but I didn't want to go too far. I didn't want to be a zealot. I didn't want to be a Jesus freak or any of those things. And God just kept pulling at me and pulling at me and pulling at me. And I started studying more and more. And I couldn't run anymore. I was running from it because I didn't want to be in ministry. I didn't like ministers. I didn't like organized religion. I didn't like most churches. But I loved God. And so finally, I couldn't run anymore. One day he said to me, "Leon, am I real?" And I said, "Yes, sir, you are." He said, "Leon, do I love you?" I said, "Yes, sir, you do." And then he said, "Then why don't you trust me to make more out of you than you can make out of yourself?" And Drago and Laura, I got to tell you, that pricked me to my heart, to the core of my heart. I said, I understand. Okay, I'm not going to run anymore. If you want me to do something for you, I'm your man. So then, instead of running from him, I started running toward him. I started studying all that I could. But now here's an interesting part of the journey. I then said, but I'll tell you what, I'll go anywhere you want me to go, anywhere in the world you want me to go. And this ministry's gone to many, many countries and all cities across this country, and, you know, thousands and thousands of churches and prisons and job corps and rehab centers and so on and so forth. I said, I'll go anywhere you want me to go, but I don't want to go anywhere unless you show up and you show off your power. And here's how I reasoned it. I said, you know, in Greek mythology, if Zeus was your daddy or Neptune was your daddy, you had certain power, like Hercules or whoever. You had certain power because a god was your daddy. So I said, and you're real, and if you're my father, then I'm supposed to have power that I can show that came from you. And Jesus, you said that the things that you did, I could also do in your name. And what did you do? You healed the sick. You delivered those. You comforted people. You showed your power through your spirit. How God anointed Jesus Christ with the Holy Spirit and with power. And they went about doing good, healing and delivering all those held captive by the enemy. So I said, okay, that's what I want to do. Anoint me with your power and let me break the shackles that are on people, whether it's sickness, whether it's disease, maladies, or even in their mind, the cobwebs in their mind, the depression that holds them back, suicidal thoughts, despondency, lethargicness, procrastination, the spirit of incompleteness. I could go on and on and on. There's so many things, generational curses. Your father and your grandfather went to prison. Third generation going to prison. Third generation on welfare. Third generation can't hold a job. Third generation didn't go to college. Third generation never made over $100,000. I got to break those ceilings. I got to break those chains. So that's what we went about doing, and we still do it.
So through your ministry, you've touched the lives of so many people going through different addictions, incarceration, and all kinds of other problems. Is there a specific moment that really stands out of you helping somebody?
There are so many. I'll share two. Matter of fact, he just called me 2 weeks ago. His name was Robert. And I met him at a drug rehab facility. And I was speaking there, and when it was over, he came up to me and said, Mr. Leon, can I share something with you? I said, yeah. So he had some great poems that he had written, and he shared them with me. I said, you've got a real talent here. I said, what do you want to do? He said, well, I want to do plays and then TV. I said, well, what are you doing up here? Well, I got this drug problem. He said, when I'm up here, I get clean and sober. I do okay when I'm up here, but then when I go back into the world, 2 or 3 months go by and then I fall again. He said, this is my fourth go around. I said, okay, well, first of all, you need some prayer. So I'm gonna pray on you to break this bondage of addiction. And let me explain this to our listeners here. What are we really? We are threefold. We are truly spirit. That's the only thing that's going to leave here is your spirit. We have a soul. What is your soul? It is your mind with your thoughts, your mind, and then your emotions, and then your will and your heart. That's your soul. And then you're garbed in the tent of flesh. You, Drago, in the tent of a man, you, Laura, in the tent of a woman. So that's what we are, threefold. Now, when you go to a Betty Ford clinic or other rehab services, usually they'll deal with two parts of you. They'll give you certain things for your body, medications or whatever. And you've seen people that are bipolar or whatever they are, and as long as they're on their meds, they're okay. They get off their meds and they get erratic and crazy or whatever again. And then they'll deal with the psychological problems. And while they're at that center, they dry out and they're okay. And then they come back into the world and they fall again. And I've seen it like a yo-yo over and over and over and over. Why? Because they never dealt with the third part. They never dealt with the spirit. And spirits get on people. Now, here's the problem in America. In America, we are so sophisticated, we don't believe in spirits, good or bad for the most part, because we're too intelligent. But if you go into other countries, you go to Africa, you go to the Caribbeans, you check out the American Indians and many other places, they believe in the spirit realm, good and bad. I've been around as part of my learning deliverance and dealing with spirits. I had to check out a lot of things. I've been around shamans. I've been around so-called witch doctors and so on and so forth. I've seen them call in entities purposely to take on that spirit. I have seen, and this is going to sound so far out, but I have actually seen Shamans call in the spirit of an otter. The spirit of an otter has come on them. They jumped into the water and swam like an otter and caught a fish with their mouth. Now that's something a regular human being cannot do. I've seen many things that I don't talk about because it's too far out and people think I'm crazy. But let me just say this, that in other realms, people will call in spiritual things to take on certain powers, and they'll do it purposely. In America, because we don't believe in the spiritual, we'll do certain things and those spirits will come in even though you didn't call it in. In other words, people that take certain drugs, they get too high. They've opened up a door. People that drink too much, they've opened up a door. And these spirits, they're not looking for an invitation. They just come in and then they want to try and take over your life. Now, even though we don't believe in this, we do have certain sayings though, don't we, Drago? Like, whatever got into Jimmy? Jimmy is out of his mind. Little Janie is no longer herself. Where'd those sayings come from? In the old days, liquor used to be called spirits. So anyway, in the spiritual realm, to get truly rid of an addiction, you've got to get rid of that spirit of addiction. You've got to go to the root cause and burn it out in the spiritual realm. And there are certain ways to do that, and those are the things that I have been trained to do. The only people that I know that have been completely set free are those where you got to the spirit part and set them free also. Or people that have humbled themselves and finally said, you know, I've done every single thing I can do and I still can't get rid of this. If there's really a God, please help me. And for the people that have humbled themselves and they're at the end of self and tired of making excuses, and they ask for that spiritual help, Spirit will be there to help them. And they get set free. So at any rate, Robert, I prayed for him. So then I said to him, look, you need a challenge. So here's what we're going to do. You want to do some TV shows. Well, there's an old thing here where you can't do work in Hollywood unless you're a member of the Screen Actors Guild. And you can't become a member of the Screen Actors Guild unless you're working, because they got so many unemployed actors. So it's a real catch-22. So I said to Robert, I said, so look, I'm going to put you on the honor system. When you get out, you call me, and if you go 3 months of being clean and sober, I'm going to get you a Screen Actors Guild card. And then you'll be able to do some television shows. So he'd call, hey, Leon, I made it 2 months, I fell. Okay, we're going to start again. All right, this went on for 6, 7 months. Anyway, finally he made it the whole 3 months. I got him the Screen Actors Guild card. He went on to do some plays, he went on to do some TV shows, but here's the thing that I really love. Somehow, some way, he met an Arab prince. And that Arab prince took a liking to him and adopted him into the family. So now he goes to Saudi Arabia and Abu Dhabi, and he's in charge of their transportation when they come into town. And when they come to town, these people have so much money. He said, Leon, you know, they don't deal with credit cards. They just bring in boxes of money. He said, and when they're renting cars, they might rent 50 cars. He said, so I'm in charge of the transportation and so on and so forth. And a minute ago, I called him Robert. Well, that's because his name has changed. His name went from Robert when they adopted him to Robert. So I saw this man's whole life change because of prayer and because of somebody believing in him. And he calls me, and now it's been 20 years. 20 years. And I tell people, because lots of times people say to me, well, Leon, don't you miss show business and so on and so forth? And I say, yeah, you miss the creative process and so on and so forth. But I'll tell you what, my Emmy, my Grammy, my Academy Award is when I see a life change. That's the most rewarding thing in this whole universe, to see a life change for good through the living God.
This is why I got into quantum healing hypnosis technique.
Wow.
So I had briefly told you about quantum healing when I met you at Conscious Life Expo. Was it February this year? And
Yep.
I told you that I'm a hypnotist and I help with the most extremes of people. So people with the most extreme drug addictions, alcoholic abuse, it doesn't matter what your obstacle is. I do a level of hypnosis that helps you face the moment that's causing you to have these addictions, the moment that you're running from. So it seems like we both do the same. And I 100% agree with you how it's not really about the money. It's about helping people, because the moment you see them helped, it lights a fire in your heart, man. And like, you never forget it. It'll give you goosebumps to see someone physically change for the first time in their life, or to acknowledge the things that they wouldn't acknowledge and bring forth into their life and admit it. And that's some powerful stuff.
It is, and to God be the glory. I was dealing with a situation, and a young lady shared something with me, and we went through a deliverance session. And she had been close to suicide for many times, and just burdened over and over and over. And I said, okay, we're going to pray together, and we're going to do a deliverance over the phone. And she called me back the next couple of days, maybe a week. And she said, I got to tell you something. I've been going through this struggle for 10 years, up and down, and severe depression and so many other things. And she said, in that one session, it did more for me than 10 years of therapy has done. And I said, that's because we're dealing with the power of the Holy Spirit. So to God be the glory.
And I think this is why Hollywood, they won't discuss God. Like there's this weird push away from God and going certain directions in Hollywood. And that just made me think about how many celebrities would come to you over time, being troubled with what's really going on in Hollywood behind the scenes and needing your advice.
Well, I'm not at liberty to name names, but I will say many, many, many have come. And also they've brought their children or their teens or their adult children and said, we've gone so many other places, but we heard about what you do. We need help. And God showed up to help them.
And then you just began to look towards topics that are not the easiest things to bring to light. I mean, getting involved with just UFO, ET disclosure kind of stuff. And that's what I always thought it was such a amazing convergence of just this very spiritual, creative individual, like multi-talented holy man is now gonna open up to the world of disclosure and UFOs and people like David Wilcock and Corey Good. And I don't want to like just switch gears. It's just amazing to me. Just where did that start to emerge though for you when you were just on your journey? Just that interest, that connection.
Sure.
All that.
Couple things. One was in my spiritual journey, I never knew if I'd come back to Hollywood at all. And many, many doors had opened up since then for minorities, but I never felt led to come back. So I'm just out doing ministry. And then it was several years ago now, God put it in my spirit. Okay, I want you to always do ministry. And we always will. As a matter of fact, these get set free meetings of getting people delivered in their body and in their mind, we're setting up now to start doing several per month in different cities. So at any rate, we're going to do these get set free meetings, several per month. So I was always going to do ministry, but the Lord put it in my spirit. Now I want you to come back and use Hollywood as a platform and do what he called transformational movies or documentaries or television shows. Shows that still entertained, still made good money for the investors, but also had either a spiritual message or an inspirational message or a lot of knowledge contained and so on and so forth. So we started gearing up to do that. And then along the way, I was introduced to some people and I was introduced to others in the metaphysical world. That's what I call it. And that's a whole different world than the Christian world. Now, I don't really fit into the Christian world per se, because I'm a little more broad-minded than a lot of my other friends would like me to be. In other words, if they talk about ETs, they'll say, well, ETs are all demonic entities. That's why they know things, but they're all demonic. Well, from my studies, I have seen that there are many different species of ETs, and they're more or less like humans, aren't they? In other words, some humans are angelic, some humans are negative, and some humans are neutral, and some just have their own agenda. And that's how I've seen a lot of these ET species. So to me, they're not all demonic, they're not all angelic. There's a variety. Now, my good friend Kevin Burns started Ancient Aliens. And in Ancient Aliens, every angelic encounter on those shows is an alien. Well, I see a difference. I see that there are angels, that there are ETs, and there is this negative demonic force. And there's a distinct difference between all of them. And so some of the encounters in the Bible might have been ET-like. Others were definitely angelic, and certainly others were certainly of the dark and the negative and the demonic. So I see distinct differences, and I deal with each of these differently. So as far as the metaphysical community, and I love it because the people have such good hearts, and many of them mean well with their good hearts. But I've also seen where a lot of them get fooled because as they're searching for truth, they're opening themselves up and trickster spirits come in and they'll lead you down the wrong pathway. And in many instances, people don't have an anchor to keep them from being detoured or sabotaged. And so I try to help them in the way that I can. Now, sometimes I have to tread very differently because they don't like religion at all. And I'll say, I don't really like religion, but I love true spirit. I think organized religion has perverted true spirit, but one has to make a distinction. Hmm?
That
What'd
was
you say, Laura?
You just said the most brilliant thing right there. Well, everything you say is keep going. Yeah.
So when they don't want me to mention Jesus, I say, well, you know, that's like you wanting me to talk about the light bulb and what's making this light bulb work, but you don't want me to talk about electricity. there is something different about Jesus. And for me to have my real power going, I need to talk about Jesus. I need to use that name, because that name, there's a specialness to that name. So let's not throw everything out just because you're against organized religion. So it's that fine tightrope walk that I have to do when I'm dealing with a lot of people in the metaphysical community.
Would you say your real introduction to the metaphysical community started at the Academy Awards in 2018?
No, because you got to remember now, I was good friends with Kevin Burns I've been friends with Kevin for over 30 years.
Yeah, and he created Ancient Aliens, the whole show.
Correct. And we'd have dinner or whatever at least once a month for over 30 years. And I've always studied the metaphysical because it was fascinating to me. So I've studied it all my life.
Since 10 years old, you had a moment that was kind of unexplained. I would love you to tell that story.
I've had many minutes or moments that were not explainable, but I've always been a searcher. I always searched for truth. So when I was a kid, let's say 10, 11, I used to say, you know, I'd like to meet an alien. And I'd like to become friends with an alien, because if I could become friends with an alien and they could show me things and tell me things, look how smart I'd be. Look how much I would know. So I was always open to that, and I was always studying and reading different books. I'm a cerebral person. So I read lots of books and watched many TV shows and so on and so forth. But now, Laura, my prayers are a little different, because it's like, wait a minute. I never really got to meet and talk with an alien per se, but I get to meet and talk with the living God, who is far superior than any alien, because he created the aliens too. Now there's a verse, Jeremiah 33:3, that says, I call out to you and you answer me, and you show me great and mighty things which I do not know. And that's a prayer to the living God. And that's a prayer that I use. Living God, I call out to you. And thank you for answering me. And thank you for showing me great and mighty things which I do not know. Thank you for giving me the spirit of wisdom. That's a spirit. It goes beyond knowledge. It goes beyond book learning. The spirit of wisdom. Thank you for giving me discernment. Thank you for giving me enlightenment. And you learn, and I learned this as a writer, enlightenment, where you can just be still and tap in. And all of a sudden, these thoughts will come in. They'll just drop in. That's how I've written scripts and everything else, learning just to be still. Most artists are like that. I remember Jimi Hendrix talking, and before he became, quote, the Jimi Hendrix, he'd play for other bands. And sometimes in playing for another band, while they're on stage, he's supposed to do a certain riff, and instead he's gone way out with a whole different riff and so on and so forth. And after that session, the other band leader would get mad at him saying, Jimmy, what the hell were you doing? He said, hey man, something dropped on me and I had to just go with it, because if I didn't go with it, it would have left. So I had to go with it until I could detain it, but I got it now. So many people know how to go up there. There's all types of ideas up there. There's all types of knowledge. There's all types of creativity. You just have to learn how to go up there, tap into it, grab it, and bring it home.
You know, one of the secrets is that it's stillness, like meditation, and most people can't even meditate. They can't even be quiet for 5 minutes in their busy life. And that's the secret to it all, just to shut up, sit down, remove all the stupid distractions, the cell phone, the streaming, all the addictions, and just be quiet and just listen.
Draco, you couldn't have said anything more profound. And that's something that I teach in prayer, true prayer. Because first of all, one of the problems when it comes to, quote, prayer is that people lump all prayer into one category, prayer. But if you learn how to pray specifically and strategically and scientifically, there are many different kinds of prayer. There's the prayer of agreement. There's a prayer of binding and loosening. There's spiritual warfare and on and on and on. So you got to learn to pray specifically for what you need. However, to pray efficiently at all, one of the first things you've got to learn to do is be still. And like you said, that's a lost art. And then you've got to learn how to be quiet. And that's a lost art. And I think it's a trick of the enemy. Now, what do I call the enemy? The dark forces. And there is a war going on. And the dark forces in this society have made it so that people cannot learn to be quiet. Where can you even get quietness nowadays? Any shop that you go into, they're playing music. Anywhere you go, there's noise. If you go to camping, I went camping with my brothers a couple weeks ago. And the other people in other tents and so on and so forth, they're playing music. So you're not even getting quiet out in the woods. You need to be quiet. You've got to be quiet to hear that still small voice that will change your life if you give heed to it. And that's the voice of the living God. Usually it's not some big rumbling voice. It's a still, quiet voice inside you that will tell you things and show you things if you learn to be quiet and if you learn to be still. If you're too much in a hurry, you'll miss it. Too much going on, it'll pass you by. So it's a lost art. We've got 24-hour everything, 24-hour sports, 24-hour news. Now you got the internet. Now you got YouTube. Ba 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 ba. When are you ever going to be quiet and still and even find peace within yourself?
I think they programmed us since birth to feel uncomfortable with silence because they've only distracted us. And through the law of inversion, you basically take something as innocent and godlike as to be still and listen and be in the moment, because most people are never in the moment. And this is one thing I do teach people. Like, it took me a lifetime of making mistakes to learn to stop focusing on the future, stop focusing on the past, to be in the moment. When someone speaks to you, stop waiting to respond and to hear their words and to feel their words, because if not, you're only feeling yourself. And it's like you're turning off your mind. They say the universe is mental. There's only the mind. So if you distract the mind with all these technologies, this is the reason why we can't unite and become one. Because in order to become one, you have to be still and to be quiet. And that's how you see.
You know, you're really saying some profound things, both of you. But one of the things that you just said was when other people are talking to you, most people are not listening. They're just waiting for their chance to respond. And listening is a skill in itself. And even to be a good actor, if you're really a good actor, most actors, they're listening to that other actor run their line, and then they know what their line is supposed to be, and so they're waiting to respond. But a really good actor is going to listen to what that other actor is saying. And if they're listening intently, then it helps their response, even though they already know what that written response was as far as what that character was supposed to say. Listening is another lost art.
What do you think, Laura?
Yeah. I'm listening. No, it's beautiful.
Leon, you blow her away all the time.
Oh yeah, Leon. Yeah, just when I met you, we were doing filming for Cosmic Secret and above Majestic. What an interesting time that was, and how we recover from, I guess, certain tragedies or misunderstandings amongst people, brings it back to just the ministry, just the connection, just the silence, just the connection.
So here's probably
Ministry is the
a good,
action, obviously, behind the
yeah.
connection, but you know that we went through some stuff together that was kind of interesting that I don't know if we want to bring up.
Yeah, well, we're going to have to bring it up because I think it's part of this interview, and Draco had already talked to me
Because
about
we
it.
could talk
So
to you for
I,
hours, and I think an hour and a half has already gone by, and I could I could just sit here for hours and hours. It's
well, what we could do is break this up, maybe,
just like the sun. It's like,
and we could break it up into maybe part 1, 2, and 3.
yeah,
Something that
definitely,
continues.
because I don't want to miss
Okay.
any parts of it or jump over to a different thing just because of timing, right? Because everything
Yeah.
that you shared, yeah, I mean, to me, it's just in that silence, it's like you have access to the creative imagination, and that's a gift, and intent and willpower is a gift, ego is a gift. How are you going to drive that ego and that vehicle? Is it going to be integrated into your soul knowingness of love, of being of service? Or is it just going to cut itself off and get addicted to this inverted matrix and all the divide and conquer tactics that create so much separation and pain, which to me is the root of all disease, because love heals everything. And so you're so when I met you and we were filming for these particular documentaries, as far as the sort of bigger picture of it all, can we begin to talk about, like, what it means to recover from just what you thought was something that wasn't, and how you maintain your light, your love, your God presence?
Sure. We can talk about that, and I think that it has to be talked about. I'll begin by saying that I think a lot of people are tired of hearing about the atrocities of Corey Good, because it's old news, it's negative news, and one would rather talk about something positive or something with positive disclosure and positive events and so on and so forth. And quite frankly, I would rather spend my time and energy talking about other things too. But unfortunately, but unfortunately, this nuisance lawsuit has now gone on for over 3 years now. And that's unfortunate as far as our legal system. That's something that should be, in my opinion, immediately dismissed and thrown out, because there's not one shred of evidence has dragged on this long to the tune of over $100,000 in defending oneself over nothing, much less the time and the emotions and everything else that has been spent. And one of the big problems is that Corey Good doesn't want to settle anything, because he makes his living suing people. He makes his living suing people because he's got that Light Warriors Defense Fund that people send money into, and That's how he lives. That's how he makes money. That's how he pays lawyers and so on and so forth. So he's not looking to settle things. When you look at it, and he says to the people that send money, well, you're helping me to defend myself against the dark forces or the cabal.
But how could
Well,
you ever have been put in the category of any kind of dark force? That was the minute I cut myself off. When I saw what was happening to you and him, that was when everything changed for me. Because
well, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you for that. So when we really look at it, and I hope that people that are sending him money will look into this, you're not helping him defend himself from the dark cabal, because who is the dark cabal? He sued Gaia, he sued Jay Widener, he sued me, Roger Richards, and Adrian Youngblood. Are we the dark forces? Are we the cabal? No. And as a matter of fact, he's not defending himself against anybody. He's the one bringing about the lawsuits. I have a whole list here of over 25 people in this wonderful metaphysical community that Corey has either sued, threatened to sue, or send a cease and desist letter to. He has gotten away with this reign of tyranny in this metaphysical community because it is a community of love and light and forgiveness. If he tried to do these things in the rap community, he would have disappeared a long time ago because nobody would have put up with this nonsense. When I was doing the interview for Matthew, and I made a very important statement. And my statement was that I am trained in deliverance ministry. Trained. It took many, many years to learn how to do deliverance the way I have been trained to do it. So therefore, I can spot the negative forces. And Corey Good is riddled with demonic energy. He's riddled with witchcraft. A normal person could not even think the way this man thinks, would not do the things that this man has done to so many people in this community. And that's just the truth. And anybody that is a light worker can recognize the demonic forces on this man. He is the antithesis of the law of one. What does he do? He tries to manipulate. He tries to dominate. He terrorizes people. He uses fear to get his way with people. He has no gratitude at all for any of the people that have helped him, including David Wilcock. I had to defend David against Corey, who was his best friend. I had to fight to get David his full share of percentage for Above Majestic that Corey didn't want to give to him. After it was David who had brought Corey into Gaia. It was David that helped him with his contract. It was David that went out and did fundraisers for Corey that raised him close to 100,000 tax-free dollars. Did Corey care? No, he didn't. As a matter of fact, he said to me, David doesn't deserve a percentage. David's lazy. David's arrogant. He doesn't deserve a percentage. David actually cried when he heard what Corey said. David said, how could he do this to me? And I've done all these things for him. When I went back to Corey and said, you know, he raised this money for you. He said, oh, it wasn't 100,000, Leon. It was more like 80. And I don't know if it was tax-free. Well, what the hell? If you were broke and had no money and somebody did a fundraiser for you, shouldn't you be grateful? Shouldn't you be thankful? Why would you deny this man his fair percentage of Above Majestic? And I could go on and on and on. With Jay Wyden, here's a person who was your producer, who built you and your name and your story and so on and so forth, and you turned around and turned on him. The truth of the matter is that anybody that's been around Corey, he has fallen out with, from his MIT employer, who had to get a restraining order on him, to Contact in the Desert, Conscious Life Expo. He picketed against them and so on and so forth. These were people that gave him a wonderful platform. And how did he return that? By coming against them and trying to picket them. Gaia, who took a chance and spent hundreds of thousands of dollars to promote him and his story, instead of laughing him out of the room, they believed him and supported him and so on and so forth. And out of all the thousands of people that have been on Gaia, he's the only one that has turned around and sued Gaia like he has. He has no gratefulness. He's a sociopath. He's a mentally unbalanced, chronological liar. And it's really an atrocity that he has gotten away with as much as he's gotten away with.
Watching his depositions was really hard to hear him talk about everyone so viciously and so non-connectedly. Like he really attacked Jay, and that really got to Jay, and it's to the point where Jay posts almost every day talking about Corey. And for Jay to do so much, and then the whole Gaia employee movement thing happened, and I was one of the original people that actually fell for the lie. I thought like Jay Widener was the bad guy, like David was saying, because I was a hardcore David Wilcock fan. And when Corey came on the scene, I had my reservations about Corey simply because you could say I'm a professional lie detector through what I do and my brain damage and my motorcycle crash. It helps me see things that others can't see, but I wanted to believe Corey. So in the end, when he came out saying that all of his experiences were only happening in the astral realm and through his meditations, I'm like, you literally lied to everyone. You provided evidence that you were literally being picked up at your own house, showing photos of indentations in the ground, showing that these darts were landing, picking you up. And then you build a whole show and the premise on this is real, and then you attack other people in the secret space program when they try to come out, like Jason Rice, sending cease and desist orders, and like it got out of hand really fast. And I had to go down that rabbit hole and like talk to all the insiders and all the people that dealt with Corey, and like no one wanted to talk about Corey because like if you're a speaker, odds are you do shows with him, right? So you can't just publicly say what you want to say, even though you know some of these things about Corey. So in the consciousness community, it split everyone.
Yeah.
You have the fundamentalists that truly believe his story and they won't listen to any evidence. It's like cognitive dissonance. No matter what you show them, it's fake news. It's from a parody website. It's unsubstantiated, and they won't even look at it. So to get to the point where even Laura can talk about the Corey Good thing, that's a lot. Like it takes a lot to talk about someone you might have looked up to and like you traveled the world with and you made all these memories with, So unfortunately, these things.
Yeah, just like in the work you do, just the work I do on myself about everything is what good came out of it. What did I learn? There is a lot of information that he brought forward that needs to be, shared around 1947, World War II kind of era. A lot of the information he brought forth about with his glass pads, a lot of the, he presented a lot of really important information about Almora Bird and the sphere beings and what they put around the planet that other people that are part of the Earth Alliance have verified. But this person that is part of that saw that he was threatened, and he started to turn dark. And that's what we kind of experienced is, you know, a lot of that information is true, but where the the persona of Corey Good is, you know, walking down this other road, there was I have so much information about like kind of what, you know, happened. It's just, you know, you just kind of keep what resonates. And
Can I say something?
um you know what I mean? It's like I'm writing my book right now and I'm including some of his quotes or his information because he presented information that was pretty factual around the time of, you know, this particular time of history that I'm writing about. But when it became such a fantasy or just his own thoughts that we heard in this deposition, and that those were all lies when it had to do with the Anshar, that's like a whole nother thing. I mean, there's too much to unpack with all that. So
Well, there's a couple things here, if I can weigh in. What's confusing to a lot of people is what you said, Laura, that a lot of information did come from Corey. However, a lot of that information was not information that was original with him. He plagiarized a lot of people. He took other people's stories and so on and so forth and combined them into his journey. So yes, a lot of the information is correct. A lot of knowledge is there, but it wasn't just his. That's number one. Number two, there's a big difference, and in the spiritual realm, one has to really be careful to dissect the information and the knowledge that might sprout from the vessel. And there's a truism that you judge a tree by its fruit. And this man could not be this light warrior and all the things that he claims to be and treat people the way that he has treated them. Now, his personality is a personality that's splintered. There's part of him that comes across very nice, very likable. I loved Corey. I was tricked and fooled by him. Now, I was not in his camp at the beginning. I was not there doing the things that Roger and Adrian did with him. I was brought on for several reasons. One was when David was not treated properly when it came to getting his percentage, he was also concerned with, well, how am I even going to get a percentage when the money does come in? Will we know when the money came in? Will it be a fair account, and so on and so forth? So therefore, there was a neutral account set up that would deal directly with the distributor, Orchard 1091, so that when the money did come, it would go into this particular fund. And then I was the person that was in charge of putting the money out to the various percentage holders. That's the way it was set up. And it was because of distrust at the very beginning. That's number one. The other part that I was brought in for was to try and get Corey's story done as a TV series or a movie. Now, this is part of going all the way back to one of your questions earlier, Laura, as to me being in the metaphysical community. There are certain great truths here in the metaphysical community that I think could help the world. Now, for example, if disclosure, true disclosure ever came out that ETs are among us and that there's a whole array of ETs out here, if that ever truly came out where the average person could accept that, then how could we have division here on Earth? How could we have division between whites and blacks and yellows and browns when there's ETs out there? How could we have so much greed going on and so much backstabbing and so on and so forth if we're learning that here's other beings that are so much more powerful than us and have so much more knowledge than us. Let's see if we can learn some of what they know, some of their technology and so on and so forth. So these are the things that I was excited, was putting this movie out. And that's what I was betting that could take place. And I was tricked and fooled because, as I said, I loved Corey. My big problem was I didn't vet him. And by that, I mean do research on who he was and what he had done in the past. David Wilcox said to me, Corey is a nice guy, and he needs some help. You should look at working with him. And I took it as that. If I had vetted him and saw how many other people he had fallen out with, no way in hell would I have worked with him, because usually if there's a pattern, it's going to happen to you. But I didn't vet him, so that part was my fault. And quite frankly, I don't really even follow social media. You know, I don't have the time to do it, so I'm not looking at posts and this and that. So the doxing that was going on and the various other things, I did not know all of the various dark deeds that Corey had done to so many in this community until the lawsuit was announced. And then when people found out he was suing me, of all people, because I wasn't after anything from him, and we'll get into that in a minute, that's when all the phone calls started coming and the stories. Hey, Leon, do you know what he did to me? Hey, Leon, do you know what he did to this one? And so on and so forth. And if we're getting into the lawsuit, why am I being sued? Because I stood up for the team, because I didn't cave in to Corey's demands when he wanted all the money that was supposed to come from Cosmic Secret put into his account instead of this neutral account that I just alluded to, and demanded that the money be put into his account. I told him, no, it's not your money, and that's not what I was brought in to do. I told him on several occasions, you know, Corey, everybody needs someone in their camp to stand up to them and tell them what's right and what's wrong, instead of someone in your camp that's just going to kiss you behind because you're you. Michael Jackson, in my opinion, would still be alive if he had people in his camp that said to him, hey, Michael, you're getting a little bit too out there. You're going a little too far. You need to stop this. He'd still be alive, in my opinion. It had gotten to a point where even his own family, for the most part, couldn't get to him because he had become so secluded. Now, I told Corey, and I mean this, I'm too old to give up my spiritual integrity at this point in my life. I walked away from Hollywood when I was at the top of my career to serve God. I am not going to contaminate my spiritual integrity for anybody at this ever, much less at this stage in my life. So what's right is right and what's wrong is wrong. And I told him, this is wrong to take this money. I'm not doing it. So somehow he got to 1091 and had them divert the money anyway. And now let's look at this as far as law of one and giving and being big-hearted. He took his team's money during COVID, when all of Hollywood was shut down and no one could work, and these people had already worked for over a year. Nobody was getting paid up front. People were getting paid on the back end, and you took the back end of your team's money during COVID when they couldn't earn any other money, and you're a leader? No, you're not a leader. You're not anything, and you're certainly not following the law of one or anything else when you would do that to your own team. And their families suffered because of that. he took the money and had his henchman, Liz Laurie, write to me saying, well, Leon, this is just while an audit is going on. And there will be complete transparency. You'll see how much, the team will see how much is coming in. And then after the audit, everybody will get their fair share. Well, I want to say this publicly. How long should an audit take? A simple audit like this should have taken 90 days.
Not a couple of years.
Pardon me?
Not a couple of years.
That is correct, Drago. Liz Laurie and Corey Good wrote me in February or March, somewhere in there, of 2020. So it's been 3 years, not one trickle of transparency, certainly not one trickle of any money being divided to his team. He, in his deposition, said, well, I gave David Wilcock a payout. Well, first of all, Corey, who are you to, first of all, take the money or even give David Wilcock a payout when you only owned 16.5% of Cosmic Secret? What gave you the right to take people's money?
How did he legally do that, being that you were the neutral steward for that entire account legally?
Here's what I think happened, Drago. The original contract was signed with Above Majestic, and that was signed before I even got involved in working with that team. So Corey was the one who signed that contract, not Roger Richards, who was the director. Corey signed the contract. So I think what Corey did was he went back to 1091 and see, Cosmic Secret was, for all practical purposes, a sequel of Above Majestic. And usually the sequel, as in this case, is baked into the original contract. Even though it wasn't called Above Majestic 2, it had a different name, it was nevertheless the sequel. So the sequel fell into that original contract. I think what he did is he went back to 1091 and said, well, I'm the one that's on the contract, not Leon. And I believe, and we haven't gotten all this worked out in the court system yet, but I believe he also forged some paperwork from the SBA neutral site that the money was supposed to go into, saying, and now it should go into this account, because somehow, some way, it stopped going into the account that it had gone in for a whole year for Above Majestic, and now went into this other account. By the way, he also said in the deposition that he fired me. You know, he took great pride and said, and I fired Leon Isaac Kennedy. Corey didn't fire anybody. First of all, nobody worked for Corey. Corey never had any money. He was always burning through money like paper, always on the verge of being broke and destitute, always needing advances that he would call me about. Can I get an advance sent to me, and so on and so forth. Corey, you just had $10,000. Yeah, but I know. Anyway, so he wasn't paying anybody. His company had no money. He never gave anybody a contract. If you listen to Roger and Adrian talk about when they asked Corey for contracts, when they were working for him at the beginning, he would always say, well, I talked to the Blue Avian, and the Blue Avian said that I shouldn't sign anything. One of the things that I would have to ask him, if the Blue Avian were angelic entities, I think angelic entities would not just always be at the behest of Corey Good, they would be for the higher good of all. So why was it that they always just wanted to do what Corey needed or wanted? But my point is this: nobody worked for him. It was always a team effort, and people were being paid on the back end. Well, after they waited for their money on the back end, this man took their money. So they didn't get their money on the back end after a year and a half's worth of work, and still haven't gotten it, Draco, as you pointed out, some 3 years later. And it came out in his deposition when he was asked, well, how much did you collect, Corey? And he didn't give a precise answer, but, well, over 240,000. Well, how much is left? Well, I don't really know. Well, what did you do with the money? Well, I paid myself back some of the money, and I spent some of the money on other things. You know, it was not your money.
Yeah, that's
You
fraud.
it is fraud. Now, here's diabolical genius when it
If it was
comes
done
to
from different states between different LLCs, if he did it through different states, he's committing even a bigger felony. Because when he said that he possibly went through Orchard 1091 and he possibly forged some documents from SBA, the other LLC. I mean, if there's no official chain of custody that shows that you actually contributed to that transfer of ownership and or responsibility, that's fraud. And beyond a felony, that's numerous counts of felony. And then for him to say that all the money that he took in through Orchard, he has no idea where the money is, he screwed himself. All that money he spent that's unacknowledged or unaccounted for, he just dug him such a big hole that he has no idea what he got himself into. And not even that's not even including the tax implications of what's going on. You know, like naming your own wife as part of the board and giving her a salary with money that you don't even legally own. You know?
It's one atrocity after another. But here's another reason that I call him a diabolical genius, is because the things that he does, he turns it around and spins it and puts it on someone else. Now, right now on the internet, he's calling me Leon Isaac Kennedy, and then it has these big blurbs: embezzler, mail fraud. What are the other two, Marine? There are four of them altogether.
One of them is Leon is a supposed minister who can't act like one. Another one is a monster in preacher's clothing. He makes sure that he's going to say he's going to update your IMDb personally to let people know what kind of snake you are.
Say that part again.
He said he was going to personally update your IMDb profile to let people know what kind of like slimy snake you really are. Direct quotes.
All right.
Oh, not right.
All right. So let's address some of these things. Now, we won't get into the slander and the defaming and so on and so forth. But let me go back to the deposition. First of all, his deposition, they wanted to keep confidential. And my deposition and Adrian's deposition, they wanted to keep confidential. That's him and his attorney. I wanted everything to be totally transparent, because if you have nothing to hide, why should anything be confidential? That's number one. And by the way, I must say this: from day one, when that first lawsuit came out, and even if you look at my original interview with Matthew, I challenged Corey way back then to say, look, Corey, why don't you come on camera and you sit down next to me and go through every single one of your charges, and I will sit down next to you on camera and go through and refute every one of your charges with my evidence to back it up. Well, if you're a defender of truth and a light warrior, why not do this in front of the entire community? But he never accepted that. So going back to this confidentiality, he didn't want his deposition to come out. Well, his deposition did come out.
And you were the one that released it, correct?
No, I didn't release it. I was accused of releasing it.
Gotcha.
But I didn't release it. As a matter of fact, it bothered me that his deposition in its entirety was released, because he had 5 hours worth of lies. Now, the part of the truth that did come out was enough to hang him, like you said, where he said his whole testimony was really in his mind, when he had told people, oh no, this really happened. I physically went to all these other places. So that part he hung himself with. He was also on a very popular radio personalities show, and swore that his testimony was true, that he physically went to these places, which now he denies. With another popular radio personality, he told them, oh yeah, and ships came to my house, picked me up. So all this was shown for him to be this chronological liar. But other parts where he talked about me were so full of lies, lie after lie after lie. As a matter of fact, I sent him a letter, which I'll share with the two of you, and you can post it later if you want. But I wrote him a letter later saying, you know, Corey, it was very hard for me to sit through 5 or 6 hours of you lie after lie after lie, and I couldn't say anything, such as I kept him from hiring attorneys. When the truth of the matter is I hired 3 attorneys on his behalf and had the retainer check to show that I hired attorneys on his behalf. Or I kept him from having accounting. No, I had a certified accountant do all of the certification of SBA Entertainment as far as where the money went and when it came in. Or he said some of the people that were supposed to get their money never got their money, or they were mad at me because they didn't get their money on time. When I and Maureen sent money out in a timely manner every single month. I called every single one of them after his deposition. Are any of you angry with me? Did any of you not get your money on time? No, Leon, we're not angry with you. No, Leon, we always got our money on time. Thank you. It was just another one of his lies.
And you said everyone was paid within 2 weeks of every time you got a check from Orchard.
That is correct, and we have the bank statements to back it up. But this is lie after lie after lie with a Corey Goode, because he's a chronological liar. And here's the sad part of our justice system is that a person can say anything and his lawyers write it up, and then you've got to spend all this time and effort to defend yourself against nonsense. Now, if you look at his deposition, he couldn't answer most of the questions succinctly. He had not one shred of evidence to back up anything. Now let's contrast it with my deposition. When his attorney Val asked me a question, I answered every single one of her questions precisely, and more than that, and said, and here's the paperwork, or here's the email, or here's the text to back up what I just said. Now, I did my deposition in November. Then for 4 months later, for him to come out on social media and call me an embezzler, call mail fraud, and so on and so forth, after the depositions have already been done. When now watch this, within my deposition, if there was some embezzlement, wouldn't his attorney have asked me, and Leon, how do you justify this amount of money being taken? And Leon, how do you justify blah, 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 blah? None of those questions ever came up. Why? Because it never happened. And when you're suing somebody, I think you're the one that's supposed to have all the evidence of what you're suing them for. As a matter of fact, in my deposition, I'm the one that brought up about the embezzlement because it was never talked about. And I said to Val, you know, I want to address this because embezzlement is a very serious charge. I want to know, what money are we talking about that was embezzled? What's the amount? What account did it come out of? Where is the accounting showing embezzlement? And where is all this money? Where'd it go? I asked those questions. They couldn't answer me. He's the one that took money and admitted $240,000. Not me. But he's a diabolical genius because he'll put on someone else as a shield what he actually did himself.
That's the Hegelian dialect. You basically accuse the person you're challenging of what you're guilty of. You always accuse them first. So if you ever come back with a, no, it was you that embezzled money, you're like, what are you talking about? I already said you're the one that embezzled the money. So like, that's what he's been playing for the longest time. And like, one of the biggest things he said on the depositions is he does everything to the letter of the entertainment industry, which would suggest he signs contracts. But then he deviated from everything he just said and said, I didn't sign any contracts because in the consciousness community, we don't do contracts. It's you shake someone's hand. So like, wait a minute. So you don't have a contract to have done the things that you legally did, and there was no contract set up. So like, that was kind of hard to hear, and it's just to hear him fumble upon his words so many times and incriminate himself over and over. It was mind-boggling, like just over and over and over, and like his cockiness and his attorney's cockiness. It was so unprofessional, you know, just the way they treated, like the way she would talk to you and treat you and berate you, and like she would talk down to the other opposing attorney. It was a bit much, but I feel like she's a direct reflection of Corey Good. Like they're almost the same person. Like you also have to realize that in order to have a RICO case, RICO's defined as if two or more people conspire to deprive a person of their life, liberty, or property, they commit a felony. So with all this evidence, it's typically done through discovery. Discovery is typically done before you're actually making all these accusations. They've done some kind of investigation to find the facts and evidence, which they don't have. And up till this day, they still don't have those facts and evidence, which means the case doesn't have, it has no merit. There's no legal standing. So to bring you into court and drag this on for 3 years and you're out minimum 100 grand just for one person. There's so many crimes being committed that he doesn't realize that this RICO can be turned on him and his own attorney in the end.
Yes, that's very true. But the atrocity is that it goes on and on and on, and someone is allowed to get away with it. But see, that's part of his MO. Part of his MO is to do a smear campaign on the individual that he comes against. And the other part of his MO is to try and wear them out financially through attrition, to drag things out as long as possible. And he said this on one of his posts. He said to Jay Widener, I'm going to own every single thing that you have. So this is what he does. And it's such an unfair playing field because the money that we're paying out is coming out of our pockets, whereas he's getting donations. Help me out. I'm being attacked. Come on, give. I got to do a deposition. I need some more donations here. And it's such a farce.
Yeah, he originally misled the public, making them think that they were help funding taking down the cabal, the people that all these evil people coming against Corey Good and the SBA and all that stuff. And it turns out he convinced the public that all you guys were the enemies. You know what I'm saying? And like a lot of these people that donated money to the light worker legal fund, I forgot what it's called. He led people to believe that it was fighting the cabal. And in the beginning, he never let people know that it was going against all these lawsuits, and the people themselves were funding all the lawsuits. So it got really convoluted really fast.
You know, here's part of a letter that I have, and it says, highly esteemed conferences such as Contact in the Desert, Conscious Life Expo, and others gave Corey prestigious speaking platforms before multiple thousands. When Corey was no longer welcome due to lackluster performance and sometimes even being intoxicated before speaking, now what did Corey do? Instead of manning up and accepting responsibility, he either tried to sue, defame, or have his followers picket these conferences. Once again, we have documentation and eyewitnesses willing to testify regarding these statements. The following is just a partial list of those in the metaphysical community who Corey has tried to sue, send a cease and desist, suppress, attack, silence, or shame within our community. David Wilcock, Emery Smith, Dr. Stephen Greer, Linda Moulton Howe, Richard Dolan, Bill Ryan, Carrie Cassidy, Teresa Llaneras, Derek Foss, Dark Journalist, Jimmy Church, Elena Koponik, Tony Rodriguez, James Ring, Randy Kramer, Og Telex, Dylan Monroe, Duncan O'Finian, Shane the Ruiner, Miles Johnston, Sting Bobina. I hope I pronounced your name. No, Stina. I'm sorry, Stina. I pronounced your name wrong. Stina, Adrian Youngblood, Roger Richards, Leon Isaac Kennedy. My question, can all these individuals and companies be wrong and at fault, and only the Corey Good is in the right?
What do you see is the end to all this?
Yeah.
What was that?
Unfortunately, the end would have to be whenever the court finally gets around to saying this is a farce and you are a farce, and now your charade is over, because he has manipulated the courts, he has leveraged the courts to try and get his way. I have documentation that he sent to David and Emery. You know, these were partners of his on a TV show. And once again, in Corey Good fashion, when Gaia no longer wanted Corey to be on the show, what did Corey do? He tried to convince David and Emery, well, if I'm not on the show, the two of you can't do the show. And naturally, they were going to do their show anyway. And then he threatened to sue them. If you go to do the show, I'm going to sue you. Then later, and I have this email where he sent something saying, well, you know, I wasn't really going to sue you, David. I just wanted Gaia to think I was going to sue you. It was a way that I could just use the courts to help get what I wanted. So the man has tried to use everyone, and whoever gets in his crosshairs, he tries to destroy them. Whoever doesn't agree with him, he tries to destroy them. It's like you mentioned Jason Rice and Randy Kramer and other people. He called them loppers. Why? Because they had a story similar to his. Well, if there is a secret space, quote, program, is only one individual in a program? Would not there be other individuals in a program? Yet, because these other people said that they were part of a program, he tried to defame them. He tried to keep them out of the spotlight. Why? Because he didn't want to share the spotlight with anyone else other than himself. One of the things that I have seen about Corey Good, first of all, he's mentally unbalanced. He's a wannabe cult leader. And he so much wants to be important. He so much wants to be a star. And he so much has to make as much money as he can, any way he can. And anybody that gets in his way, the hell with them. That's the essence of Corey Good.
Laura, what are your thoughts?
Oh, just to wrap this all up, this incredible interview, just how we just transformed from this.
Oh my God.
What are your
We're
thoughts?
definitely going to need to do a series on this. There's so much to talk about, and we can talk about other things other than Corey Good, because you're such a multifaceted person, and like you've done so much, so much.
Put that in the mix. It's just when we all decided to come together that we were gonna bring it up.
And let me put my own caveat ending on this, if I could. I've been, as the two of you have researched, in show business for over 50 years. And I have worked with Academy Award winning people and Emmy winning people and Grammy winning people, and some of the biggest personalities during our lifetime. And if you really scroll the internet, in 50 years, not one person has said, Leon stole one dime from me. Not one person has said, Leon stabbed me in the back. Not one person has said, Leon stole my ideas or stole my script or whatever. I've always been known as a pretty upstanding, genuine person of integrity. And for this little man to try and drag my name and my reputation and my character through the mud the way he has, just because I stood up to him and said, no, what you're doing is not right, is an atrocity.
Hey,
And
That's
he
why-
will pay.
That's why I feel such a connection with you. Because same thing I'm going through with Eisenhower and all the false narratives and blame, and it's just we rise above it.
I think what she's trying to say is basically like there's a lot of stuff that needs to come out. Stuff has been talked about, and like there's certain groups of people that keep promoting certain ideas that are lies. And it's getting to the point where they're convincing so many people that it needs to come to an end. So unfortunately, we have to do these talks and we have to bring this forward because ultimately these people are they're misleading the public. Regardless of it be you, Leon, or you, Laura, you're going through equally amount of similar things, and it's really hard to strive forward and amongst all that negative energy that's thrown against both you guys. So like both of you guys are freaking warriors, man. To go through what you've been going through, Leon and Laura, like I got to give you props, man, because like to stay afloat amongst all the stuff trying to pull you down, you're just showing the world that you're going to come on top of all this, and there is an ending, and I hope it's soon.
Well, thank you for that. I love you guys. I love you both. I love what you're doing also. And the work that you're doing, God bless you. And any way that I can support either one of you, I'm just a phone call away.
Thank you, Leon. It was awesome
Thank
meeting you at
you,
Conscious Life
Leon.
Expo and us being able to talk and chat since then. So I look forward to many futures of awesome conversations and times doing awesome stuff, man.
My pleasure and my honor.
All right, guys.
Rebel Collective. We are the Rebel Collective.
Just remember, we eventually do want to do another part to this, so that would be awesome, and we'll just leave it with that.
If you would you be willing to join us again?
Oh, absolutely. I'll do anything for you, Laura. You know that. And Drago.
Oh, thanks.
Thank you, Leon.
Thank you, Leon.
All right, guys, this is another good episode of Rebel Collective. We look forward to everyone seeing it when it comes out. Other than that, guys, stay alive and speak your truth and be in the moment and shut up and just listen.
That's right.
Bye, everybody.
Thanks.